It's a great pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, Mr Chope, and I'm very pleased to have been able to secure this debate this afternoon. It's timely because recent data published in March this year by ONS has showed a steady decline in the average rates of teenage pregnancy in England and Wales. And this data has been widely celebrated and rightly so. Teenage pregnancy is a huge barrier to opportunity. It creates lifelong and entrenched disadvantage. The causes and the consequences so often overlap. Deprivation, family breakdown, low aspiration, intergenerational worklessness, mental health difficulties, poor educational attainment and poor school attendance. Despite this very welcome fall in average rates, England and Wales still has the highest rate of teenage pregnancy in Western Europe. And so we must guard against complacency. An average is just an average, and it often masks extremes and regional variations. And it's not really enough to say that we're just going in the right direction. Now, whilst high rates of teen pregnancy are closely correlated with deprivation, teen pregnancy should never be accepted as inevitable in any area. Because to do so fails those young people affected, many of whose lives are already profoundly insecure and who may see motherhood as a positive way out. And these are the young people most in need of help and support. Now, members will share my commitment to improve life chances of young people in their constituencies, so I would like to briefly talk about the situation in Telford. Now, back in 1998, Telford had a teen conception rate of 64 per 1,000. And this is no doubt good news that it's fallen to approximately 32 per 1,000, so it's halved. And so it is indeed much better than it was in Telford. However, in 1998, the rate of teen pregnancy in Telford was 36% higher than the national average, but today it's 42% higher. So rather than getting better, the gap between Telford teen pregnancy rates and the national average is in fact getting worse. Now, I would argue, Mr Chairman, that teen conception is not inevitable. High rates of teen conception is not inevitable. My constituency lies in the heart of Shropshire, and whilst Telford is in the worst performing decile of local authority areas, rural, more affluent Shropshire, which surrounds Telford, is in the best performing decile with some of the lowest teen pregnancy rates in the country. Now, based on this fact alone, it would be too easy to argue that deprivation, poverty, health, inequality, and all that causes these difficulties cannot be improved. Naturally, there are many demographic and social factors that play a part, and I fully accept that it is difficult to find a like-for-like comparison, which is why an average doesn't tell us that much. But equally, and too often, it will be assumed in the most deprived areas that nothing much can be done at all. Good things may get better and bad things get worse, if not tackled actively. Now, there are some individual success stories in local authorities that I believe that other local authority areas could learn from. And I just want to mention a couple. In 1998, Leicester had a 64 teen pregnancy rate per 1,000, and that fell to 25, which is close to the national average in 2014. Caerphilly similarly had a rate of 70 per 1,000, and that also has fallen to around about the 25 mark. And now if we look at Hammersmith and Fulham, a similar decline has been experienced from 70 to 22, which is just above the average. So there are plenty of examples of the ways in which teenage pregnancy rates, high rates, can be tackled over time. And I want specifically to draw attention to the model in the London Borough of Wandsworth. And this has been a success story which I believe other local authorities would do well to look at closely. The rate of teen pregnancy in the London Borough of Wandsworth in 1998 was 71 per 1,000. Now, Wandsworth is outperforming the national average with a rate of 19 per 1,000. And this has been achieved by a true commitment to focusing on teen pregnancy, not just as a statement in a joint strategic needs assessment, but it was treated as the #1 indicator of how the local authority performed, and all partner agencies took this view. There was a clearly defined plan with achievable goals, a teen pregnancy unit, outreach work, early intervention, identifying those young people most at risk and providing support to address multiple causes and to help raise the self-esteem of the young people affected. There was a genuine commitment, a belief in improving the life chances of those least able to help themselves. Young people's aspirations were built up and their resilience was strengthened to help them make informed decisions and help them to fulfil their potential. I should be delighted to give you.
I thank the Honourable Lady for giving way and congratulate her on securing this debate, not least given that Torbay, my own constituency, has the highest rate of teenage pregnancy in the whole of the South West region. Would you agree with me, though, that the statistics really show that it's important to have leadership at a local level, given the wide variation between local authorities, let alone regions? For example, the rate in my constituency is very similar to that in the North East, yet only a few miles away in West Devon, they have one of the lowest rates in the entire country.
I thank the honourable gentleman for his intervention, and he makes the point very eloquently that I hope to make by the end of my speech. And Torbay indeed stands out as a very stark example of this significant regional variation that is across the country in different locations. And you rightly, the honourable gentleman rightly says that one would not necessarily expect it, given the demographic and age profile of his constituency. So the way it was achieved in Wandsworth was that resources were targeted at those young people aged 15 to 17 most likely to become pregnant, such as young people in care and care leavers, or those with disrupted family relationships, and also the children of teen parents. A quarter of young women, and I think it's really important to make this point because we had an earlier debate this afternoon about young people in care, and I wanted to highlight that a quarter of young women leaving care are either pregnant or are already mothers. And too often, they're trying to fill an emotional gap of growing up without a family of their own, sometimes in a chaotic succession of different placements. So yes, teenage pregnancy has fallen nationally, and yes, it has fallen across Europe. And that does tell us quite a lot about the changing world, with young girls routinely aspiring to jobs and college and a better future. And we need to do everything that we can at a local level, as my honourable friend mentioned, to help them on that path. Now, a debate of this kind must touch on solutions to problems. And as the causes are so complex, I think we have to accept that the solution isn't straightforward either. And more contraceptive advice is helpful, but it will not tackle this issue if that is the only tool in the box. If only it were that easy. And it has become fashionable to see universal sex and relationship education as the silver bullet, as the panacea to high rates of teenage pregnancy. But I think we can all accept that teen pregnancy is a far more complex social and emotional issue, and it is one that more contraceptive advice alone will not simply fix. We have to be addressing the specific needs of those young people most likely to be affected. So the focus has to be concentrated on the at-risk groups, those most in need, in order to improve the life chances of the most disadvantaged young people. Building stronger families and early intervention support for struggling families is part of the solution. And we need also to recognise that looked after children have different health and educational needs. We mentioned earlier in the debate this afternoon about mental health of children in care, and that is an aspect that is a determinant in this complex issue. And also school is not always a fixed certainty in the lives of these young people. So more sex and relationship education at school will not necessarily tackle the problem if school attendance, for example, is a problem in itself. One of the marked examples of the regional variation is that what you can identify is those young people who will be affected. If, for example, a young person has been in contact with police or doesn't like school or been excluded. NEETs, for example, again, another example of a group of people who are most likely to be affected by teen pregnancy. And I think we've also touched on the concept of a disrupted childhood and difficult relationships within families. I do want to pay particular tribute to this government's Life Chances strategy, and I do want to see a continued focus on championing stronger families. Tackling teenage pregnancy in the areas and groups where rates are highest should be the overriding priority in achieving this goal. I should be delighted to give it.
Thank my honourable friend for giving way, and my heart swells to hear her speaking so warmly around the government's priority given to families. Placing families at the heart of policy decision making is our stated aim, recognising that around any and every outcome, be it prosperity, going into the future, health outcomes, strong family relationships are absolutely fundamental to that. And I think my honourable friend would agree that it's not just the young girl and her extended family and the father of the child who are affected by teenage pregnancy. It's also the child coming into that situation who will likewise suffer the same potential sort of social inequalities moving forward. So it's even a generational issue that we really must champion.
Jan.
My honourable friend makes a very important point, and indeed the rates of teen pregnancy where parents themselves have been teenagers are extremely high. So it's again an opportunity to target those groups that we know are more likely to be affected. By any measure, teen pregnancy rates are a primary indicator of an unhealthy society, and it is right that local authorities are charged with tackling this issue. And I would say to all local authorities, please don't take your eye off the ball. Whatever the challenge is that a particular area may face, let us not accept it as some sort of immutable fact that can never be turned around. Local authority areas with the highest rates of teenage pregnancy have been successful in bringing the rate down to below national average, whereas many other local authority areas have not been successful. So it is essential that local authorities look very closely at what they are doing and whether it is good enough. And in my view, it simply isn't acceptable to say it's an inevitable consequence of deprivation, there is nothing more to be done. There are local authorities who have brought about real change, and there are others where local politicians will sometimes park this sensitive issue. I would like to ask the Minister if he will do everything he can to encourage those local authorities performing less well, to learn from the outstanding examples that I have mentioned. And I would ask him whether he agrees that local authorities should explain publicly why it is they are not making better progress. Life chances of young people depend on how their authority will tackle this issue, and I would urge all local authorities where the rates have come no closer to the national average in recent years to reassess why they are not doing what they ought to be doing and how they can do it better. We all owe it to all our children to ensure strong life chances, a potential for a better future, and by tackling high rates of teenage pregnancy where it is at the extreme end of the spectrum is an essential to achieving that.